Automate everything you can. Like as much as you can automate, just do that because that'll save you time. And if you can afford it, hire a VA. Those are my top two tips for saving time. And get with a consultant, someone who can actually work through how do you do your stuff? What do you spend your time on during the day? And have them show you ways that you can cut corners, save time, not double your work, all that kind of stuff. And that's both with automation, but also the system that you have. Like, how do you go about what you do? And it's not just the tools, it's like how you do it.
Welcome to the Cashflow Fight Club podcast. I'm Mike Deaton.
And I'm Lygia Deaton. Together as co-hosts in life, business, and this podcast, we're matching up the heavyweights of cash flow creation to see who reigns supreme.
We do this so you can discover the best way for you to generate transformational cash flow and pursue the life of your dreams. So whether you're a side hustle seeker, full-time entrepreneur, or just looking to create job-quitting cash flow like we did, hit subscribe and grab your ringside seat for the most entertaining and informative investing show on the airwaves. Let's get in the arena.
Let's do it. Can you be more efficient in your work or life? Are you ready for an epic efficiency throwdown?
I'm all about digging into today's matchup. Optimization, efficiency, automation, I love it. Today, we have two similar yet different business models facing off in the Cashflow Fight Club arena. One, a master of process efficiency and systems, going head-to-head against the wizard of workflows. Paul Minors has grown his part-time side hustle as a productivity blogger into a behemoth of a consulting practice focused on process efficiency. He now consults with companies around the world, receives over 100,000 visitors to his website each month, and has amassed followings of well over 30,000 YouTube and email subscribers each. And he pulls in over 6 figures each month. He's coming to us from Auckland, New Zealand. Please welcome Paul, the Optimizer Minors. And facing off against Paul is Daniel Whitworth. Daniel, a father of 6, is a journeyman, having spent time as a naval submariner, a pastor, and now is an entrepreneur and programmer. He loves networking with people and helping others master their processes while solving solutions. He comes to us from Virginia Beach, Virginia. Please welcome Daniel, the workflow wizard Whitworth. All right, let's jump into the arena and get this matchup started. Okay, Daniel Whitworth, Paul Minors, welcome to the Cashflow Fight Club podcast. We're super happy to have you both on and looking forward to a great matchup.
Yes, welcome.
Yeah, thank you. It's going to be fun.
So, as I was briefing you guys on a little bit earlier, we divide this up into 3 rounds. So first round is just getting to know you guys. Round 2 is business basics, and round 3 we'll dig in a little bit deeper. And then after that, Lidge and I usually take a minute or two and we'll compare our notes and crown a champion of the Cashflow Fight Club podcast. So with that, let's kind of jump into round 1. Paul, I don't know why you're farthest away. You're already, Paul's coming to us from New Zealand, by the way. It's like a day and a half in advance or whatever. So he's already about to end his work week. But give us a little bit about your background and how you got into the line of work you're doing.
Yeah, sure. So in terms of what I do, we specialize in a very, I guess, somewhat niche type of productivity consulting. We specialize in a few bits of software. So Asana, which many of your listeners will have heard about or maybe use, is a project management tool. And so we're one of Asana's support partners. And what we do is we provide consulting services and support to customers who need help with this tool. So we help with account setup and training. And then we do something very similar for Pipedrive, which is a sales CRM. So these are actually the 2 tools that I use to manage my sales and operate my business. And then the third kind of pillar to that is Zapier. We use Zapier to automate lots of processes for our clients. And so we specialize in these bits of software. And in terms of how I monetize and generate cash flow for the business, it's primarily through those consulting services that we offer. But actually, in the last year, I've gotten into reselling the software as well. So you can actually buy licenses through me, which is fun because it's been a new source of revenue for the business. It's recurring, lower margin than consulting, but generally higher revenue. So there's kind of a couple of ways there that we monetize the work that we do.
Gotcha.
And in terms of how I got started, I mean, I started using Asana in 2012, so over a decade ago now. Um, I was working in marketing at an e-commerce company here in New Zealand. And like a lot of companies, we were trying to find a project management tool to manage our work. We couldn't really find anything that worked. And it wasn't really part of my job description, but being a productivity geek, I found Asana and showed it to my boss, who really liked it. Long story short, we moved the company onto Asana, and it became the primary tool we used to manage our work and communicate as a team. And so my boss at the time paid me a bonus. He said, "Look, what you did there, getting us on board, was fantastic. Paid me this bonus." And it was actually a few years later, I was getting my productivity blog up and running and trying to think of ways to, I was still working full time, and I was trying to think of ways I could monetize my services. And I thought back to that experience, and I thought, maybe there are other businesses out there who want help with this tool. And Asana didn't even have any kind of consultants at the time. They didn't have a partner program like they do now. And so I started just making videos for YouTube to market myself, and it all kind of snowballed from there. And then I started doing Pipedrive as well, because it was a CRM I was using in my day job. And within a few months, I was sort of earning enough to replace my salary, and I could justify quitting my job. And I made it a full-time gig in 2016. And I've grown the business now, and I've got a team around me of consultants who do a lot of that legwork for me now. And that's where I am today.
That's awesome. Yeah. So started just really from you saw a need and resolved a problem within your own, as an employee in a company. And it sounds like you also had a productivity blog on the side, and that was what, 2014, 2015 or something.
Yeah, I started the productivity blog, which is just my website, paulminors.com, probably around 2013, 2014. I've always been interested in productivity. I really got really interested in productivity when I was studying at university. I was sort of getting into like scheduling my time and my assignments on my calendar. And that's where I started time blocking everything and looking at different ways to just plan my time to be more productive. And so that's always been in an interest of mine, is how can I achieve more in the time that I have? So I had this productivity blog, and then the Asana Consulting. This company I worked for almost became my first case study, or my first client at the time, although I didn't really realize at the time. And it just felt like a good opportunity and a problem that people had, because these companies, Asana, Pipedrive, lots of software companies, they have limited support. You can go to their websites, you can read about how to use their software, you can watch videos. But a lot of the people that approach us, they just want to talk to a human being and have someone sit with them and hold their hand. And that's the service that we provide.
That's awesome. Yeah, that's great stuff. And just on a personal level, you're in New Zealand. You speak with a New Zealand accent, or what I would envision one to be. Are you a native to New Zealand?
Not quite. I'm from England, so my accent's kind of a bit hybrid New Zealand / English.
Yeah.
Some people say I sound like a Kiwi. Some people think I sound English. So it's somewhere in between. And I've been here for 16 years, so just about half my life now. And I live here with my wife and two boys.
That's great. But New Zealand's very high up on wish list of places to visit on our lives. But man, it's such a it's a bit of a stretch to get there. So it's
it's basically anywhere you're coming from, it's going to be a pretty decent plane ride to get here. Yeah.
Right on. All right. Well, thanks for that. Daniel, what about you? Tell us a little bit about your background and how you got into workflow and efficiency and that.
Yeah. So I'm a totally self-taught person. So I'm a do-it-yourselfer kind of guy. I always have been, and I've always been cheap. So I don't like to pay for things. So I just build it myself. And that's how I got into programming. I went to college 20 years ago for computer engineering on the Navy's dime. And one class was on programming in this program language called Java. And at the time, I just fell in love. It's like, this is my love language here, folks. And so I just started making programs for fun. And at home, my wife and I, we just recently got married at that time. We're going to hit 20 years this year, by the way. And so I built a budgeting software for us. I built a recipe sorting and like spitting out, all that stuff exists now, but this was 20 years ago, before a lot of that stuff was really popular. And then we read a book called No More Mondays by Dan Miller. And I got the idea of like, well, maybe I can sell these programs online. There was this idea of like, because I was in the Navy. I got really tired of working for someone else. And I was like, I had this dream of not
Mm.
working for someone else. And this idea of owning my own business was a great idea. And so I was like, hey, maybe I can sell these programs I wrote. I need to learn how to create websites. And so I literally learned how to create websites by writing code. There
Yeah.
wasn't WordPress. It wasn't any of these Wix websites. I learned HTML, CSS, JavaScript, PHP, SQL database. I don't know if any of that makes any sense to you, but it's all the background languages that
Yeah.
make websites work. And so I taught myself all of that stuff. Those two products that I made, they're gone. They never sold anything because guess what? I didn't know how to do. I didn't know how to do business. Didn't know how to market. I just knew how to program and make really cool stuff. And so then I started doing programming inside the Navy as well, like just building different things for whatever job I was doing, whatever I was doing Navy wise. And then I got into ministry. I built a volunteer coordinating software for our church. Even though you could buy those things and get subscriptions to them, I was like, I just want to build my own. And so I did. And we used it as a church for a long time. And so honestly, I'm a programmer at heart. I do this because I like efficiency, because I like automation, and I just like the challenge of actually building things like this. And so, as Nicole told you in her podcast, about 3 years ago, 4 years ago, I was done with the military. I stepped out of ministry, and we decided to give this online business, the Your Nursing Tutor thing, a full time chance, and it worked. We got a coach, and we launched it, and we hit a full time income in like 6 months. And a huge part of all this was all the programming I do. I built these systems. One of the things I had to do was we were on this product called Thrivecart, and then we moved over to Kajabi. Well, we had members in Thrivecart and we had members in Kajabi, but in order to track the statistics of like who's still paying us and all that, I
Mm.
built our own like in the middle system using a product called Airtable. I could literally
Mhm.
track both memberships at the same time, but in one place. And so eventually we moved all the way over to Kajabi, and I've built automations for that. And so through that coaching program, though, we got connected with, so it's called Flip Lifestyle, and they started going on the road. And because Nicole and I were a good testimonial, he brought us along. We're doing these seminars all over the country. It was like super fun. And then he hired both of us to actually be coaches for him. So coaching other people to start, build, and grow online businesses. And I'm still doing that, by the way, kind of as a side hustle. It's like 30-minute calls with people who are just at the very beginning stages of like, I have an idea, what do I do now? And so kind of helping them. And I've become known as the tech guy. If you need your website built, or you want to figure out how to do this or connect your domain, all that kind of stuff. And so all through this, I'm building stuff. I'm programming. I'm doing all, Zapier. I've become I love Zapier, man. It is one of my favorite things in the world. So Zapier is cool. And but then there was this one of my coaching clients. She had built this monstrosity with like several people from Fiverr. I don't know if you know what Fiverr is, but it's like one
Yeah.
of those places you can hire out people. And so it was like this weird system where she was on the cheap, so she didn't want to buy like a big CRM or anything like that. She's just like, I want to be able to just text all my people. And so she was using Twilio and Google Sheets and this click funnels and trying to get it all through with Zapier and stuff. And so they built this thing that the problem was is what they built, it worked, but it required like 15 steps for my client to do it. She had to copy this list here, go into Zapier, change this setting. I'm like, how is that gonna, like, she's not a tech person, why do you think she hired you? So she's like, can you fix this, I'll pay you. I'm like, oh, you'll pay me, okay, that sounds cool. And so I went in and I reconfigured. She wanted to use the same tools, and I reconfigured it. So I created a sheet in the Google Sheet with a box and a button that said send. All she had to do was type in and click send, just like you would on your phone or something like
Yeah.
that. And after that, I was just like, hey, if she'll pay me to do something, and this is the thing, this is fun for me.
Yeah.
This is what I do for fun for 20 years when I wasn't getting paid for it. And so that just kind of clued me in, because I've been this whole time with Nicole's nursing tutor thing, that was more her thing, right? She's the face of the
Mhm.
business. She's the nurse. I'm the one just doing all the background stuff. And so I was like, what can be something I do? And so I decided to do this, and I ended up just kind of putting it out there. I started out with some really not so great names for myself, but then I got a few clients through the Zapier group on Facebook. So there's a couple of Zapier groups, and people will come in there asking questions. And of course, there's a bunch of us in there doing the same thing, like, hey, I'll help you with that, And I actually got a couple of them, and they called me a wizard. Like, no kidding. Once I did what I did, because the people that don't do this kind of thing, it's like magic to them. It really is. They're just like, how in the world did you do that? And that's kind of where the name the Workflow Wizard came in, because I'm really all about workflow. All about like getting that streamlined process of automating everything you can, so that I'm that guy that'll spend 3 hours writing a program to turn 2 clicks into one. Like, that's just, and it's even better if it's no clicks at all. It just happens in
Yeah.
the background. I could
Yeah.
give you so many examples. Like, most of my programming has been for myself all through these years of just doing different things. But now that I'm doing this, and I guess we'll get in that in the next section, like, it's so fun to get to do these other projects for other people, because there's just all kinds of interesting things they're doing. So yeah, that's the story of how I got into this.
Yeah, I love that. We are right on the precipice of transitioning here, but you guys both strike me as what I would call a creator, right? People that like to create things. And yeah, Paul, I don't know as much about your background, but it sounds like, Daniel, at least for you, when you understand the language of how these things work, right? Like, yeah, there's Wix and Squarespace and all these different UIs, let's say, that work on the surface level, so that people can do things, and then it manipulates the code underneath. But when you understand the code, one, I think you already have a mindset, or you already have a worldview or a way of looking at things from this programmer's database language, right? It all works in a certain structure. And that's the hard thing, I think, for a lot of people, is to even envision the workflow or how things should work, let alone.
And that is one of the challenges for sure, is that, and I'll get into this when we talk about my process, is that most people have no idea what can be done.
Yeah, I want X, but I don't even know how to tell you.
They just know they want to save time.
They just know they want it. They don't even know how to ask the question. Like, that's the thing.
Let's do that. Let's get into round two. I think we're right here. So I am curious to learn a little bit more about your business model, your process, how you tease that out of people, right? Somebody comes and says, I have a problem. I want this, or I want this more efficient or something. And how do you go about doing that? Do you whiteboard out things and kind of have a workshop, or what's that process look like? If not processes, depending on the person. Daniel, we'll just stay with you on the thread.
Okay. So I've only been doing this as a business since like September of this past year. So not very long as far as actually doing it for money. And what I started with was the Zapier groups. Like, one of the things I coach online people to do is like go on Facebook or wherever and find where the people are that need what you're offering, and make yourself a presence there. And so I joined a bunch of entrepreneur groups. They were useless for this. And then the Zapier group was great. And what's beautiful about that was the people that came there knew about Zapier. They knew about automations. They just didn't quite know how to do what they were trying to do.
And
so
that's that's a Facebook group called the Zapier group.
Okay. Yeah. There's like a few of them on there. And so this was a nice fishing hole, because literally they're biting. They already know they're halfway there.
Yeah.
But the problem is like few and far between. Not everyone on there is looking to pay someone to do something, and there's a bunch of us on there fishing, if you know what I mean. And so I then decided to join BNI, Business Networking International. I don't know if you're familiar with it, but it's a referral networking program that a local friend of mine joined me up in, and I became part of a launch chapter. And so that's how I began the network marketing, meaning not like Malaluka or something like that, but like I spend my days meeting with people, because what I do, like I said, one of the challenges I face, and the reason why the Zapier group was so good, is that most people don't have a concept of what can be done behind the scenes. Can I give you an example? Because that's how I do it. Every time. Here's how I sell my stuff. I give examples, because then the lights come on. They're like, oh, because I just talk in terms of automations and applications and all this stuff. It's like glossy eyed. What are you talking about? So I'll give you an example. So a recent client of mine was a math tutor. All right, he tutors high school math students, and his process up until this point was texting back and forth with the math student, trying to arrange a time to meet. right? And so first he would do that, and it would take a while to actually schedule a time that they meet. And then after his meeting with them, it'd be a virtual meeting over a Zoom or something. He would manually create an invoice in QuickBooks Online if he remembered. And what he found was, so I met him through BNI through a speed networking thing, and what he found was is that he oftentimes would forget, and now he's chasing people down, and it was very time consuming and manual for him to do this. And he's like, "Can you help me?" I was like, "Sure, I can." And this is a very simple version, by the way. I can do way more complex things than this, but I added Calendly, and also he didn't want to like spend a lot on a huge CRM or something like that. He just needed something simple to make this process work, and this is kind of where I come in. And so I put Calendly on his website. Novel idea, right? Guess what? Your students can book themselves, right? You
Yeah.
set your availability. It shows up in your Google Calendar. All you got to do is show up to your meeting. There we go. That was easy. But now it's like, what about the invoice? So I used Zapier to connect so that at the end of the tutoring session, it will automatically create an invoice in QuickBooks Online. And what's cool about QuickBooks Online is it has this thing called sub customer. And so you can have a parent, literally like mom and dad, and then the child has an account too. And so I can use Zapier to make it so it bills the parent of the child instead of the child. And so it creates an invoice. And then my client said, I want you to wait 5 hours to send it so I can go in and update the time if needed. And so I set it up so that Zapier creates an invoice in QuickBooks Online for the parent, sends my client an email saying, this invoice is created. Click here to edit it. It's going to send out at this time. And so now what used to be a system of forgetting and time consuming, it literally happens invisibly behind the scenes. And the only time he ever has to do anything is if he wants to edit the invoice. And so that's just an example, a very small example of the kind of thing that I do. And that's how I actually get clients is I meet with a lot of people. I do speed networking, both in BNI and in Alignable. And so those speed networking, it's like you get to meet with someone for 6 minutes. And the beautiful thing about that is you do that enough time, you really nail down what it is you do and how you talk about it. And so I've gotten pretty good at that. The example really helps. And so I just ended, that's my process is I do a lot of meetings. I do the speed networking. And then afterward, you follow up with like a 30-minute one-to-one or a meeting, something like that. And so in a given week, I'll meet with 15, 20 different people and just talking to them. And they may or may not be clients, but as they learn about what it is I do, and then I talk through what their situation is, and I provide like some, possible solutions to what they're doing. It's both a short term and a long term, right? It's the kind of thing where it's going to snowball over time. And what I've already seen, and this has been beautiful. So I only started in September, like on Facebook. I didn't really start the BNI thing until October and started networking, but I've been consistent about it. And now just in December, this past month, it like I was getting just trickle of stuff before that.
Uh-huh.
December, I was packed out. I made over $5,000 just off of like a few projects. And now here in January, I'm already past that, and we're not even halfway through the month. And I've got like 5 or 6 possible clients lined up for the. I'm gonna have to start putting people on a wait list because what I do here's one of my challenges is that I'm a freelancer and I want it that way. I can't serve 100 million so many people. So I'm either going to have to raise my rates or something like that. But I do have some recurring revenue opportunities that I can bring into the mix in the next part of the discussion if you want to, or I can talk about it now. Which do you prefer?
Yeah, we can table it for a second, but
Okay.
I love what you're doing, and even in the example you provided, you can already see how most likely that person, just by paying to set up this workflow, has made up whatever he was losing and forgetting to charge people for their services.
And not only that, but how many more clients can he book because he doesn't have to spend the time texting back and forth with them and all that stuff.
The normal efficiency
saves him time, makes him more money. That's basically what I do for people.
Yeah, that's great. I love it. So it sounds like you're pretty flexible in terms of tool sets that you use and ways to solve problems.
I can use literally anything online.
Yeah.
So whether it be like Zapier is a favorite tool of mine because it's so versatile, connects to over 6,000 applications. But inside of Zapier, I do custom code all the time. Like I can get into APIs, which are the backdoors to programs. And so I can literally, if it's online and it's not in a lockbox, meaning it has no API, it's not connected to Zapier, there's no way to get inside of it, then I can basically build a system out of multiple systems or create a completely custom system for you from the ground up. So pretty much anything you want to do online, no matter how interesting or unique or different from the standard stuff. That's the fun stuff. That's what I can do.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And how do you price out your services? Is it just time
It's
based?
per project. One of my philosophies when it comes to how I price things, it's like it doesn't matter how long it takes me. It's how long it would take you to do this kind of thing, right?
Yeah.
That doesn't mean I charge outlandish prices. That's part of the learning process of doing this is the people I ended up, soliciting and whatnot and seeing. And so it's pretty much per project. So for instance, that little Zapier thing I did with the tutor, that was $300 flat. And then for another one, this guy's doing an upscale to his business where he's changing from a strictly coaching program to membership and online community. And so I'm actually reconfiguring his whole system from 5 different softwares down to 1 or 2. And so that's going to be more like $5,000 because there's a lot of moving
Yeah. So
parts,
you look at the
that kind of thing.
complexity, a little bit of what's
The
going on, and
complexity, what's it worth to
the pain
them,
point for the yeah.
that kind of thing. Yeah. So that's kind of, it's all just kind of gauging those things right now. Eventually, after I do this long enough, I'll probably have some standard prices, but right now I don't really. So.
Sure, yeah, I totally understand that as you're getting going. That's great. Love that. I'm gonna flip over to Paul unless you have a question.
Later.
All right, Paul. So kind of similar. You've teased a little bit about your main systems that you use and how you do that, but give us a bit more about the flavor of what it is that you and your business are doing.
Yeah, sure. I'll start by saying that when I started my business, I was very similar to Daniel in that I was working on my own. I did a lot of very custom work for our clients, both in Asana, Pipedrive, Zapier. Similar process, scoping the job, give you a fixed price based on the value that we provide.
Mm-hmm.
And then what I've learned is that it's a great way to get going. And Daniel, I'm getting ready to deliver my first jab here. But it's not a scalable way to grow your business. And actually, if you want to start earning high 6 figures, 7 figures, you can't be the bottleneck in the business, or everything can't come through you. So now I wear a very different hat in my business. I basically just do sales and I oversee everything. And so I've actually grown my team. And actually, the first outside hire I made was actually a friend of mine here in New Zealand who does all my Zapier implementation now. So I have a Daniel Whitworth on my team. So I don't have to do any of that implementation anymore. I meet with the client, I scope the project, I give the price, and I have somebody else do that for me. So that way I don't have as much of a capacity issue. And then on the Pipedrive and Asana side of things, again, I started doing very custom engagements. But in order to make the business more scalable, I thought, well, okay, how can I repackage or deliver my service in a different way that is a lot more scalable? And so what I did a few years ago is I packaged for example, our Asana support into a program where instead of just meeting with me one-on-one, and there's sort of a limit of how many hours I can offer per week for all my clients, they now get access to an extensive library of videos. So in their own time, they can be learning about how to use Asana. They can follow all the common advice that we give to everyone again and again and again. So video training they can be going through in their own time. I also do weekly group coaching calls for my clients. So I do a call on a Monday. I might get 5 or 6 of my clients at once on one group call. And it's sort of like an office hours service that I provide. So clients have access to me each week. But more importantly, I'm helping 5 or 6 people in one go. And it's awesome because customers will start helping one another. Somebody will have a question and somebody else already knows the answer. Yeah. Or they'll say, oh, I didn't even think to ask that. So bringing clients together in a group setting is much more scalable. And then I also brought on a couple of extra consultants who now do the one-on-one sessions with our clients. So I've been able to farm out almost all of the consulting and implementation work that we do to the team that I have now. So I can just focus on selling. The program is very scalable, so I can sell that as many times as I need to, and I can bring on more consultants to handle additional capacity if we need to. But that's the changes that I've made from where I started, very similar to Daniel, to where I am now. And I mean, I'm on track. I've made over 7 figures this year. Our financial year is slightly different, so we've got a quarter left to go. But I'm into the 7 figures now in terms of revenue for this year. And I think pivoting and repositioning my business is what has allowed me to achieve that next level in terms of growth and of course cash flow, which is why we're here.
Yeah, for sure. So, just I guess as I was listening to you, and you talk about having, and I'm probably going to use a improper terms here, but like it sounds like you have uh, pre-designed solutions that have been packaged up. And so, are you selective with your clients, or do clients know I need this type of solution? I can go to Paul Minors and get that, or
Yeah. Well, the good thing about starting the way Daniel has and the way I used to is that you kind of almost need to offer that very custom support in the beginning.
Mhm.
And I did that for years. And what that allowed me to learn is after doing literally hundreds of projects with clients, I realized, especially with Asana, Zapier is slightly different. Everyone's requirements of Zapier or what they want to automate is quite different. So it's hard to package something like that. With something like Asana, almost all of the clients that come to us have the same few problems. They tell me, we don't know how to set this tool up in the best way, or we're already using it, but we're not getting the most value from it. My team's not really using it the way I want. So after doing a number of custom projects, I start hearing the same thing again and again and again. And so that gave me the experience and the insight to then develop this program where I can develop the videos and I can develop an outline where it's like, okay, look, here's the program, follow my steps. I know that almost everyone coming to me is going to have similar problems and the program's going to be a good fit. But yeah, I was only able to do that having done so many of those custom projects and learning what are those common
Yeah.
pain points that keep coming up again and again.
Yeah, it makes sense. It seemed, it seemed a lot more rigid than the freelancing and all of that. But
Yeah.
I can see now.
But it's almost required. You need that strict, like, packaged services if you're going to scale and if you want to generate more cash flow for the business. Having a rigid, very niche sort of packaged offer is kind of what lets you achieve that scale and get to that next step.
100%. Yeah, totally on board there, and that definitely clarifies my mindset, kind of where I was thinking a different slide. However, therein lies a little bit like you mentioned you spend the majority of your time doing more of a sales type role. It sounds like Daniel may not enjoy doing a sales type role. He really, it
No.
sounds like his passion and love is programming. So, and that kind of stuff. So, it's a double-edged sword. I mean, we do the same thing in our business, right? You start out doing something, serving people, and then as you scale and grow, then it's like, okay, now I'm spending all my time over here and missing out on that. But yes, to
that's
scale,
actually,
you have
that's
to.
my next.
Go ahead, Paul.
Oh, sorry. I was going to say that was one of my goals for this year. Actually, is I'll be bringing on my first outside salesperson because it is kind of the final part that I need to let go now. It's almost the hardest part to let go because I'm the one that runs the business. I know how everything works. But that's a goal for this year is bring on one or a couple of salespeople, and then hopefully I'll be in a position to step back and sales is being looked after, operations and client success is being looked after, and I can just kind of pull the levers in the background.
Yeah, that's incredible. Good stuff. That's the holy grail for all of us.
I do have a question, Paul, in regards to scaling, because it really resonates with me. Mike and I are trying and we want to scale in, but in some areas we are the bottleneck because unless we clone ourselves, we need to delegate. We need to leverage other people. Did you have any challenges doing that?
Like mental limiting beliefs?
Because it's like, are we going to find the right people? Are they going to speak our language? Are they going to do what? Are they going to
represent the face of the company? All those kind of things.
According to our standards. I mean, how was that process for you?
Yeah, that was the biggest challenge for me is letting go, because when you start as a solo operator, you do everything. You've got complete control over your process and all the responsibility. When you bring on someone, they're representing the company and you're having to put a lot of trust in them. So from a mental standpoint, that was definitely a big barrier is letting go and being able to trust someone else. I think what I realized, or what I've heard, on different podcasts and reading books and things, is people often say, if you can find somebody who's going to do that job 70 to 80% as well as you can, that's actually really good, because then you can now outsource that. Yes, they're never going to do it quite as well as how you would do it, because, I'm the business owner. I'm going to do whatever it takes to make sure the client is happy at the end of the day. Somebody else who I hire, they're not going to have that same dedication because they don't have shares in the business necessarily. But if they can do a job 70 to 80% as well as you can, I think that's a good benchmark to be aiming for. So you can then focus your time on other things. The other thing that I've done a lot of, and I'm really doing a lot now because I've just hired an administrative assistant to help me, is having really clear documentation and SOPs, standard operating procedures. So for this type of question or this type of email that I get, or here's how we work with a client, this is how to follow up, this is how to run a meeting. So having actual clear documentation of what your processes are, what standards you expect your team to follow, I find is the best way to be able to give that job to somebody and say, look, here's the manual, here's the process you need to follow, and if you follow the process, it should be quite hard to do it wrong if you've written down the process clearly. So those are the things that I've done. Is as I said, number one, mentally just getting comfortable with like 70 to 80% quality, and then having that really good clear documentation in place.
Yeah, I like that. That's a great outlook in some respects. In other respects, I think you'd both agree, oftentimes we can find a resource that does things better than we do. I mean, that's
Well,
bookkeeping or
Website
something
work.
that does stuff. Maybe not in Daniel's case.
Well, this is exactly my experience. When I hired Warwick, who's my Daniel Whitworth on the team, he'd had a little bit of experience with Zapier, but I'm not a programmer. I'm not nearly as good as Daniel in terms of Zapier. I can do some basic zaps and do some simple stuff. I brought on Warwick, and he then had the time to really go deep on some of these things. And he's now doing the custom code steps and getting into APIs if Zapier actions aren't supported. So really similar to what you're doing, Daniel, because he has the time to actually learn these things. And now it's perfect. He's far more capable on Zapier than I ever was. And that's just what you want on the team, is people who are now, maybe they start off not quite as good, but now he's much better than I ever was.
Yeah. That's exactly. So, but yeah, I mean, as Lygia teased a little bit, we struggle oftentimes with, there are pros and cons many different ways, right? You can find contractors and vendors and pay them on assignment or different things, and in that case, people really aren't vested at all in your company, and they're just on a transactional basis trading a service for funds. You can bring somebody full time or into your organization, and they may or may not have the same level of attention that you would give to your own business. There are ways to incentivize, as you mentioned, right? There's through just monetary, there's through shares, different things, but that's a little bit closer. But then you have a full time resource, and so you need to have workload and different things in that regard, and then there's partnerships and stuff. So yeah, we wrestle with how we want to do that. Did you have follow-ups there? I'm going to suggest let's jump into round 3, because I think we're diving pretty deep in the weeds here in a lot of cases, and I think a good focus for us to start with is growth. Right? You've both touched on it. So Paul, it sounds like, I mean, I'm inspired by the level of standardization and growth that you're pursuing in terms of, okay, you're already onto standardizing procedures and bringing in people and kind of almost standing up a self-managing company of sorts. I mean, it sounds like you're going to have an organization where you can go 6 months on retreat, and your company could run and stuff. But aside from that, are there other things that you have done or are doing to scale your business?
Yeah. Well, the first thing I'll say is I haven't tried to grow my company for the last couple of years. In terms of growing revenue has not been a goal of mine.
Mm-hmm.
My revenue has grown probably about 20 to 30% a year on year. But that's been the result of my primary focus, which is actually to make the business more efficient. Every year, I just think about how can I offer the same value we do to clients, but in less time? Or how can we handle more clients without having to hire more people? That obviously goes hand in hand with the productivity mindset of just like getting more done for less. So that's actually been my primary goal, is make the business more efficient. It just so happens that a side effect of that is when you make your business more efficient, you grow revenue. So it's kind of funny. I honestly have not tried to grow my revenue, but it continues to grow as the business gets more efficient. The other, and then to get to your question, like other things that I'm doing, I actually realized a couple of years ago that the revenue and the cash flow that I generate in my business is not going to be the primary way that I generate lasting wealth and financial stability for my family. What I started doing years ago was actually reinvesting my profit and my retained earnings into actually Bitcoin, because I did a lot. I've done investments in the past. I've traded stocks and shares, but in 2017, I was learning about Bitcoin. It was a lot cheaper back then, and it took a while to really get comfortable investing I was investing my personal funds. It took a while to actually then take the next step and invest company profit into Bitcoin. But the more research I did, I found that actually this is the best way to preserve the profit that my company has generated, because cash flow is great. You need cash flow in your business. But cash in a bank account, it's like a melting ice cube,
Sure.
is an analogy have talked about. It's because inflation, especially high inflation now, is eroding the purchasing power of that cash. So once you generate cash into your business, you don't want to hold cash because it's just losing purchasing power. Any interest you get is barely helping
Phenomenal.
you to
Yeah,
keep
yeah.
up with
Yes.
inflation.
Yes.
So you actually need to channel that cash flow into other assets. Could be property, stock, shares. I've chosen Bitcoin because I've done a lot of research and I've found that, well, with this the hard cap, the 21 million hard cap that Bitcoin has, it's unconfiscatable. I can hold it myself. I don't have to trust a bank. There was the big Silicon Valley Bank disaster last year. I can retain my company profit in an asset that actually gains value year on year, typically. Obviously, it's volatile in the short term. You don't want to invest company profit or all your profit. You need to keep some cash
Sure.
to cover expenses. But I've got some profit that I'm happy just sitting on. I don't have any plans on what to use it for, so I'm happy keeping it in an asset like Bitcoin. And I got to say, it's worked out really well so far.
Yeah, that's great. No, definitely. I mean, you need to reinvest once you have enough operating reserves to run your business as the way you want to run it. But yeah, that's great. All right, Daniel. So you started down a path of right. You have a new business. You're going to be bursting at the seams here in another few weeks with contracts and workload. Yeah, there's different ways to manage that, right? You touched on, okay, it's a supply and demand feature, so you
Yeah.
can tweak your prices and do things. Do you have any visions of partnering or bringing on? Maybe some people can do portions of what you're doing, or things like that.
Kind of. Yeah. So kind of my longer term goal with this. So for one thing, I don't feel like I ever want to be that guy that just does sales and someone else does the programming. That's just not my personality.
Can feel that.
Again, I did
in the
it for 20
conversation.
years and didn't get paid. Like I do it for fun,
Yeah.
folks.
Yeah.
And so it's fun for me to have these clients. Now I recognize that obviously that's a lot. That's a time suck. Like all these meetings I have with people, the actual programming itself, all that kind of stuff is very time intensive, even though I am very efficient and good at it.
And you guys have a few kids in the house, I think.
Six, yeah, we have 6 kids, ages 3 to 14 that we homeschool, but that's actually part of the plan, as a matter of fact. So I do have built-in opportunities for recurring revenue, and so a lot, this idea of packages of things that are standard.
Mhm.
I'm developing things like that. For instance, the guy I did the tutoring, the math tutor, he's now paying me a little bit each month to basically host the Zaps for him on Zapier and an ongoing maintenance fee. So I build up a bunch of everyone that I do business with will end up probably paying me $50 to $100 a month just for their Zapier accounts and the ongoing I'll fix it if it breaks kind of thing. And then another thing I have that I'm just now starting to get into, but I can see this is extremely lucrative at some point, is that some industries can't use something like Asana or Go High Level or any of these other things because they have industry standard softwares, for instance, car shops. So car shops, your local AutoZone or your Firestone or something like that, they have a company system
Yeah, it's like a
that they have to
1992
use.
Visual Basic
Yeah.
database. I think anytime I go in there, I see them working on this interface.
Exactly. And so I just recently contracted with this car shop that's in Texas, and they use this product called Tech Metric. It's a great product. It's built specifically for, car shops and that kind of thing. But one of his pain points is like, I would really like to do recurring appointments in this software. It doesn't do that. And so he has this product where he does car washes. He does high end cars and like special things for them. And so he does car washes that get on a recurring, like every week, every 2 weeks, that kind of thing. And what his pain point is, like, my technicians have to literally have it in a Google Calendar because that's the only thing that'll like do repeating, and they have to manually enter this stuff in every week. And how annoying and how much time is that taken from his employees and that sort of thing. It's like, surely there's a way to do this. Well, it doesn't connect directly to Zapier, so I had to do the API. Anyway, long story short, it took like 2 months to actually get access to the API. But now what I'm going to be able to do is build a solution for this using Zapier and Google Calendar such that he will be able, inside of TechMetric, create an event, make it a recurring, and in the back end, I'll do the magic stuff, and it will now be recurring inside of TechMetric. And guess how many car shops use TechMetric and want this service? And
Tens of
so
thousands. I
things
know, yeah.
like that will allow me to scale in my way. I don't want to scale to the point where I have a huge team doing all the fun stuff
Mhm.
for me. Maybe I'll hire someone to do sales for me if I do this, these kinds of things. But yeah, so there's lots of opportunities like that because there's lots of different programs out there, industries that they can't use the off the shelf stuff, the Asanas and things like that. And then even like this thing I did with the tutor, I could package that. Like, that's a pretty standard. Hey, you want to book something and automate your invoice creation, but you don't want to build and have a giant CRM that has all these bells and whistles. You just want this one thing. And so I can build these little packages, so to speak, of standard things, just like he was describing. The longer you do this, the more things you find like these are pretty
Yeah,
standard things that people
commonalities.
are looking for. And as I start packaging these things, I can also start teaching my kids how to do this kind of stuff. And that's one of my big goals. I actually started teaching them website design just this last semester. We homeschool. Now they're still pretty young. They didn't, they're having fun with it. They're putting poop emojis on their website, that kind of stuff. But I'm hoping, and my goal is that as they get older, some of this stuff that I do, I can teach them to do some of these things. And so not only do I have workers, so to speak, but I'm teaching them a skill and a life skill and also business and all. So I don't know if I'm ever going to have a 7-figure business out of the workflow wizard. I, it's not really my goal necessarily. I think between us and what I'm doing, what Nicole's doing, I think we're going to do quite well. I think hers has a great opportunity to make a whole lot of money. Mine, I honestly started it not needing to do it, not needing. And so I do it because I love doing it and I'm learning the business of it. And so but I do have this goal of building this recurring side of the things by doing these, very specialized customizations that you just can't find. You can't buy this somewhere. You have to have someone build it for you. And so once I do one, like with this tech metric thing, I'll be able to do hundreds, if not thousands of
Yeah, you can
them with
copy paste. Mhm.
very little work on my part at that point, but still be able to charge a considerable amount. And it's a licensing fee. Like they have to pay me every month because I have the API key. They don't, kind of thing. So that's kind of that's my cash flow long-term
Vision.
growth strategy is that. Yeah. Mhm.
I think it's very obvious, and actually in both cases, that you both operate in your unique abilities, and not everybody has to have the same goal. Maybe Daniel, if you want to grow, if you really want to grow, maybe you need to hire a salesperson and a marketing guy or whatever. But I think it's so special to operate in your unique ability. And we have met with many people that are so busy doing stuff, doing business and doing this life. And it's like, who has time to think about my unique ability? Who has time to think what really gives me that juice and passion? And I think it's wonderful that you both found it, and because you both speak with so much passion and so much
Well,
joy
I
in
think,
what
yes,
you do.
I think Daniel hit the nail on the head, which is, whatever you do in your business, like, you should do more of the things that you enjoy. Um, if you enjoy coding and you want to spend your time doing the coding and getting into the weeds, like, yeah, do that. We should all be trying to outsource or streamline the things we don't want to do if that means getting on an outside contractor or someone so that we can do the thing that we're good at and that we enjoy. Yeah, for me, I really do enjoy selling, but more than that, I really enjoy making the business better, which
Yeah.
is why I actually want to be in the background, and actually have sales and everything else kind of running on its own, and I can just kind of jump into each department and then make that little bit each department that little bit better. Um, that's what I really enjoy. But yeah, whatever, if you can tie your cash flow and your revenue to something you enjoy, I mean, that's the holy grail at the end of the day.
Yeah, and that's honestly what the whole, doing business for yourself, the online business concept, and with the flipped lifestyle is what really taught me over the last few years. Because I spent a long time in the ministry and in the military, both jobs that were not necessarily things that were my passion or my love. And what's cool is like if you can find the job or the business that you just love doing it and you do it for free, but you get paid anyway. How awesome is that? And that's honestly how I feel about this. Like I'm excited because I've started to run out of stuff to do for myself. Now I have like a whole wealth of people to do really cool stuff for, and but I'm learning the business side of it, like how many projects can I take on at a time, and then also I love the power of recurring revenue, and so I've got that built into this too. Is how can I leverage that? So, but yeah, I don't really. It may turn into that. Who knows what 10 years can bring?
Sure.
Yes.
You never quite know. But for right now, I'm having fun.
Yeah, you've both mentioned it, but the main thing is to not get trapped into needing to do something, right? You program because you want to program, and people come with solutions. If you build in recurring revenue and you have other income coming in, then you're free to say no if you want to, or do something. Yeah. And same with you, Paul, right? You're setting up a company that can run, and you said it before I was able to ask the question when you were speaking a bit ago, but I was curious if you were driving productivity within your own company, or if that, a lot of times that's our blind spot, is our own, we're the guru in a certain area, but then, our own house is dirty and we don't spend time on that just because we can't. But that's great to hear. And the fact that you detached from the outcome, i.e. revenue, and really just focused on the processes and improving things, that came as a result. And so, things transition in that way a lot better. I like that. Final thoughts, questions?
Where do you see, both of you, where do you see the downside of your businesses? Like, if there is a downside. If one day you want to stop working, for instance.
Yeah, the time that it's required, both in the meeting, the networking avenue, which I enjoy because I like being with people. I don't want to, even though I'm a programmer, I don't want to spend my life in front of a computer screen like typing out code. I actually am also a people person. And so, but it's time consuming, meeting with people, and it's time consuming to do the programming and stuff, as fun as it is. And so that's really probably the only downside I see to what I do, is that it does take time. It takes a lot of time, actually.
For me, I think it's I think you have a bit of this with every business, but we're somewhat dependent or reliant on the companies that we partner with. Asana, Pipedrive, Zapier. I know Daniel will be familiar with. They have a partner program and they want their experts to operate a certain way. And I'm confident that we've hitched our wagon to some pretty good horses. But at the end of the day, these companies, like, you are relying on Asana, Pipedrive, in my case, them to develop good products, to have good marketing so that they're bringing on new customers. They're going to be supporting partners in a way that, we find beneficial, and not changing how their support works, which does happen from time to time. So there's a little bit of that, outside reliance on these companies that we work with. But no, fortunately, I mean, we love being a partner with Pipedrive and Asana and Zapier. But there's always that slight element of risk, attaching yourself to these brands.
Yeah, you're relying on them to do their updates and product improvements, even in that regard. Yeah, that makes sense.
Not that it would happen, but if they say, right, we're going to shut down Zapier or Pipedrive tomorrow, it's like, oh man, well, that's going to have a big impact on my business.
Yeah, change the pricing model or something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I just made a Zap yesterday. It's the first time I've done one in years. I think I was been in there.
Isn't it fun?
It was different than it was in 2017 whenever I did it last. It was like
they've exploded. It's amazing. Yeah.
Yeah. I always tell people with Zapier, you should be trying to pay as much as you can for Zapier. Because the way they bill is it's based on the number of tasks or actions that your zaps are doing. And, we, like Daniel, we try and create zaps with code steps and things. So instead of a zap using 10 different actions, if you can use one action, one task, that's ideal. But at the end of the day, you want to have Zapier, automating as many processes as you can.
Yep.
And so you want to actually have Zapier performing lots of tasks for you because that means it's doing more work and it's saving you more time, is the irony. So paying more for Zapier should be your goal.
Good sales pitch for Zap.
Yeah.
I hope we have time, but you both are productivity experts, and I cannot let you go without asking if you can have tips for business owners, normal people that want to be more productive with their time, to manage their time better and their businesses better. Do you have one top tip or a few top tips for them?
I mean, one of my top tips is clearly tied to what I do is automate everything you can. Like as much as you can automate, just do that because that'll save you time. And if you can afford it, hire a VA. Those are my top 2 tips for saving time. And get with a consultant, someone who can actually work through, how do you do your stuff? What do you spend your time on during the day? And have them show you ways that you can cut corners, save time, not double your work, all that kind of stuff. And that's both with automation, but also the system that you have. Like how do you go about what you do? And it's not just the tools, it's like how you do it. So those are probably mine. I don't know. I'll probably say the same thing.
I would 100% say the same thing. I'll try and say something a little bit different. I mean, because obviously productivity tips, it's so personal to whoever it is and what challenges they're dealing with. But something I think that applies to everyone is, and I call these the productivity multipliers, is if you're focusing on getting enough sleep, if you exercise a few times a week and you're eating well, it doesn't matter what you're doing, what calendar app you're using, how you're structuring and managing your day. If you focus on looking after yourself first by sleeping well, eating well, exercising, your output and your the quality of your work just is lifted. So I think looking after yourself first, get that right, and then everything else becomes easier.
That's very good advice.
That is. I like that a lot. Yeah, that's sage advice. And yes, also, I don't know if this is attributed to anyone in particular, but I think the saying in productivity is eliminate, automate, and delegate. Somehow in that order, like right? That. If you can eliminate it, get rid of it. Otherwise, automate it or delegate it.
Yep.
Yeah. I think it was, I don't know if he started the term, but I definitely heard that in the 4-Hour Workweek, Tim Ferriss.
Okay. Yeah, that probably, that makes sense.
Paul, it's been a pleasure.
Yeah, thank you. It's been awesome jumping on. Definitely a bit different to some of the other podcasts I've done. Yeah.
Yeah. Very cool. But I like what you're doing, and you're right, man. Like Asana's a great tool. Pipewire. I mean, all those things. I don't knock the big programs, but like not everyone needs all of that, right? And so I work a lot with the people that just need part of it, and they don't want to have to pay the price for the big product and everything. But I don't knock them. I'm like, hey, those are great things if you need them for serious. So. Yeah, I will agree with you on that. I mean, as you guys have both been recounting your story, I see clear lanes, right? Different niches, and one is Paul. You're certainly pursuing a good productivity process and a common system, but then there also is this space for exactly what you're saying, Daniel. Like we do this a lot. We like to contract or find someone that can just solve a specific problem. I don't necessarily want to pay for a large CRM we've used Pipedrive. We've used the free version of it, and it's very functional and does what we need to do. But we've also had people help us personalize Podio platform so that we can have that do what we need to do. But there's downsides with that as well, because then you like you said, Daniel, you're beholden to someone who does hold all the cards. And if you need improvements or if something stops working, then you definitely have to go back and revisit that unless you learn, how to do it. You learn how to do it yourself. Yeah.
Which is tricky. But so for this matchup, I definitely see the two different lanes. You serve very unique and essential needs out in the community, which is awesome. I mean, I'm already thinking of like this podcast in particular. When we have 2 guests at a time on, scheduling is a nightmare because there's really, or at least we haven't found a scheduling app where people can collaborate and find a common time. So we muscle that through when we do things like this. We're like, okay, when do you have available? Okay, do you have this available? So I like my mind is buzzing already. I'm like, oh, I'm gonna have to reach out to Daniel and see if he can help us do something. But I would say in terms of this matchup in particular, Paul, we're giving you the nod and the championship. I think you are definitely years ahead of, right? You started out as a freelancer. You have taken the necessary actions that I think inspire and motivate us to do the same in terms of we have visions of getting some of our businesses to a self-managing state. And it's just it's a hard thing to do. So props to you for doing that. But you guys both seem happy in your lane, and we love all of the tips and everything. But congratulations, Paul, and we wish you both nothing but the best going forward. With that in mind, we like to close each podcast with gratitude. So we're certainly grateful for both of you for taking the time to come and share your insights and your processes, and hopefully inspire the audience to start a side hustle or a main hustle, however they want to do it. But we also like to share a bit of gratitude from you guys. So Paul, we'll start with you. I don't know if there's somebody in particular. We all have a universe of people to be grateful and thankful for, but if there's anyone in particular you want to give a shout out that's been instrumental in helping you along your way, we certainly want
that. It would just have to be my wife Haley, who has stuck with me the whole time, and she's seen me go from I started this business when I was working full time, and it started as a side project for me, and I had to sort of go through that nervous step of taking that leap of like, right, I'm saying goodbye to the full-time, secure, safe salary, and I'm going to do this thing that I've started myself. And she listens to me complain about things that are not going well, and she listens to my ideas, good and bad. And I just can't thank her enough for the support that she's given me over the years, and I couldn't have done it without her. Yeah,
partner in crime. Yes, we all have those. Daniel, how about you?
Oh, that's obvious. My wife, Nicole, like she's been with me almost over 20, going on 20 years now. And she's always believed in me. Like one of the things I always struggled with is like, just, not feeling like I'm not really an expert programmer. I'm not really this. She's like, yes, you are. Just get out there. So she's always been extremely encouraging to me and supportive. And like, we just get along really super well, and we believe in each other. And so, yeah, I wouldn't want to do this without her. That's the truth. And so super thankful and grateful to have her in my life.
You guys make a great team. Yes. I love that. Daniel, for anybody listening that wants to reach out and either learn more or inquire about some services, what's the best way to get in touch with you?
Yeah, the best way is just go to my website. You can either do danielwhitworth.com or theworkflowwiz.com. They both go to the same place, and you can book a discovery call with me. It's a free call. We can talk for 30 minutes about what your unique situation is, and I can offer a cool solution to it. Yeah, it's probably the best way.
All right, Mr. Minors, how about you?
Yeah, and I'm at paulminors.com. I'm actually going to be launching a new site soon. I'm going to be rebranding a little bit, but for now, paulminors.com is the best place to go. Or if you do want to learn about Asana or Pipedrive, go to YouTube, type in Asana and Pipedrive and my name, and you'll find hundreds of my videos, and that's a good place to go as well.
Love that. Well, thanks again to you both for coming on the show. Impressed by what you're each doing, and wish you nothing but success here in 2024 and beyond. And yeah, we certainly appreciate it.
Yes, thank you both.
Thanks for having us.
All right, take care.
Glad to be here. Thanks.
Bye. For those of you tuning in, we thank you so much for investing your time with us on the Cashflow Fight Club podcast. We certainly had a blast, received some knockout insights, all while learning something new, and we hope you did too.
If you had fun, please subscribe to the podcast wherever you watch or listen.
Lygia and I truly believe the beauty of cash flow is having your money fight for you instead of you having to fight for money. So whether it's one of these methods or something else, we encourage you to dream big and take action. See you next time.